Welcome to Country Care to Clothing Flair, a 15-minute video where you can relax and learn. About the wisdom of family farmers and the warmth of beautiful wool. So sit back and relax and listen to Joe the farmer about ecological farming and Adeline caring for woolen clothes. A new direction. Joe the farmer stood at the edge of his land, boots sunk deep in the damp morning earth. Mist curled over the fields as the rising sun stretched golden arms across the patchwork of crops. For decades Joe had tilled the land, coaxing wheat and corn from the red basalt soil, watching the season cycle through bounty and barrenness. The farm was not only his workplace, it was the testament of his family, the echo of his father's hands, the memory of his grandfather's sweat. Yet as the world outside his fields quickened and changed, Joe found himself drifting between pride and uncertainty. The land was changing, and so too was Joe. Joe's story began as all good farm stories do, with the crunch of boots on gravel and the familiar smell of hay. His earliest memories were shaped by the rhythm of the seasons: spring planting, summer growth, autumn harvest and winter slumber. As a boy, he watched his father work with relentless determination, always chasing high yields, always seeking ways to push the land a little further. "We're feeding the world, son," his father would say, standing tall as if the very clouds depended on the next load of corn. But as Joe grew, so did the farm. The tractors got bigger, the chemicals got more potent, and the yields soared. For a time it seemed that progress was measured in bushels and gallons. The land would never forever bend to the will of technology. Joe's identity as a farmer became fused with productivism, the belief that good farming was high inputs, high outputs. At local gatherings, farmers compared notes on fertiliser blends, pesticide brands and irrigation systems. "Efficiency is everything," Joe would remark, echoing the chorus that rippled through his rural community. Yet something lingered in the edge of Joe's mind. He noticed the disappearance of songbirds, the sluggish skies. It was a storm of change, a whirlwind of new ideas that swept through the farming world. News spread of farms adopting novel methods, companion planting, crop rotation, cover crops and organic inputs. At first Joe dismissed these ideas as impractical. "That's not real farming," he'd scoffed. "The land's meant to be tamed, not yet run wild." But the world was changing. Reports of climate change, soil erosion and polluted waterways began to cast shadows over the familiar landscape of farming. The local river, once a playground for children, carried the tang of fertiliser runoff. Yields, too, seemed to plateau. The land's response with ever-increasing chemicals input weakened. At farmer meetings, the old conservationists of productivity was joined by new voices: the conservationists, the environmentalists and the organic growers. Joe found himself caught between the worlds. His identity as a farmer, a good farmer, was challenged. Was he stewarding the land or simply extracting from it? There he met Sarah, a spirited farmer known for her messy fields, teeming with wildflowers, bees and birds. Sarah spoke passionately about ecosystem services. Her father's input supplied pollination, pest control, water filtration, cultural heritage and more. Joe listened, arms crossed, sceptical. "I'm not sure this neighbour would call that a good farm," he said. "Looks more like someone forgot to mow the lawn." Sarah laughed. "It's true, some people see my farm as a lazy and untidy farm. But come spring, the birds come back, my soil is rich and I spend less on chemicals. Farming isn't just about production, it's about nurturing what's here." The seminar concluded with a demonstration of crop diversification, light tillage, the use of organic pesticide. Joe walked the fields, noticing the vibrancy and resilience. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Was there another way? The next winter, faced with the declining yields and rising costs, Joe wrestled with uncertainty. His neighbours argued with sticking with tradition. "You're a farmer, Joe. This is who you are. Don't fall for that fad." But Joe's son Ben returned from university with new ideas. Dad, have you read about the agroecology? We could try crop rotation, plant cover crops, maybe reduce tillage. It might help the land recover. Joe hesitated. The farm was not just a business, it was legacy. Changing meant risking his reputation, his finances, and perhaps his image as a good farmer. Yet the call to stewardship, the healing of the land for future generation whispered louder. One spring morning, Joe made his decision. Ben, let's try it. Let's start small and see what happens. And so the first seeds of change were planted, literally and figuratively. Transition was far from easy. Joe's faced a learning curve as steep as the hills on his property. He studied soil biology, experimented with composting, and diversified his crops. He reduced chemical input, tried out light tillage, and introduced organic pest control. The fields looked different. Wildflowers appeared in the margins. Beneficial insects returned. The soil, once compact and hard, grew friable and dark. Yields fluctuated at first, but the farm's overall health improved. Joe noticed a resilience, the ability of his land to withstand drought and heavy rains. Neighbours watched with sceptical eyes. Looks messy, they muttered. Not like the farm we're used to. Some accused Joe of neglect. Others admired his courage. Joe wrestled with perception. He understood that landscapes are not merely about aesthetics, but was a social symbol representing values, ways of life, and even moral judgment. The tidy, cultivated look of conventional farms was deeply ingrained as the image of a good farmer. But Joe saw the beauty of diversity, its resilience, in the flourish of life. The climax arrived one steamy November, when an unexpected plague of aphids swept through the valley. Conventional farmers reached for the chemical pesticide, but Joe hesitated. His new practices discouraged their use. He watched, anxious as the aphids spread. Ben urged patience. Let's see if the ladybugs and the lacewings we've encouraged to help us out. Days passed. Joe's anxiety grew. The pressure to revert to old habits mounted. Neighbours whispered, Joe's lost the plot. He'll ruin these crops. Then, as if by magic, the ladybugs arrived in force, feasting on aphids. The wildflowers attracted more beneficial insects. Pollinators filled the air. The aphid outbreak subsided without chemical intervention. Joe's farm not only survived, it thrived. News spread. Farmers visited, curious. Joe explained how agroecology practices, a web of biodiversity, had strengthened his farm resilience. He showed the healthy soil, the clear water in the creek, the chorus of birds each morning. The moment was transformative. Joe realised that being a good farmer was not just about maximising output, but about balancing production and conservation, about stewardship and legacy. With the aphid crisis behind him, Joe found new confidence. He continued to reshape his farm, integrating more agroecology practices, rotating crops, planting hedgerows, composting and using cover crops. Each change brought its own challenges and rewards. He joined a local group of conservation-minded farmers, sharing knowledge and experiences. The landscape of his farm, once criticised as untidy, became a point of conservation in the community. Some neighbours began to experiment with cover crops and reduce tillage. Others held firm to the old ways. Yet dialogue flourished. Joe also worked to educate the community about the multiple interpretations of landscape. He organised farm walks, inviting school children and residents to experience the beauty and biodiversity of his fields. People began to see the value of wildflowers, birds and rich soil. Slowly, perception shifted. Ben inspired his father's journey, decided to pursue agroecology as a career, determined to help farmers everywhere achieve a balance between productivity and sustainability. 2.10, story about Joe the farmer moving into agroecology. Now on to Adel and Luke about caring for wool. Part 1 of 2 parts.
If you've ever pulled your favourite sweater out of the wash only to see that it's shrunk 2 sizes, then this video is for you. Knitwear is beautiful, but it's also one of the easiest things to ruin. So today I'll show you exactly how to take care of it, how to wash safely, how to store properly, and how to keep your sweaters fresh so they last for years. Because buying high quality pieces is only half the battle. The real secret is looking after them so that you can keep wearing them season after season. Quick note before we start, when I say knitwear, I'm talking about natural fibers such as cashmere, wool, mohair and alpaca. And everything I'm sharing in this video is a mix of my own research and what has worked for me, so adapt it to your wardrobe and your needs. And if you've got your own tips or any special products that you use, please share them with us in the comments so that we can all learn from each other. Part 1, washing and cleaning. How often should I wash my knitwear? Way less than you think. You only really need to wash your knitwear when necessary, such as when you notice any marks or odours. Fabrics like cashmere or wool are breathable, which means they are naturally odour resistant, and they wick away moisture rather than trapping it, which prevents odour-causing bacteria from growing. I normally wear a layer underneath my medium or thick jumpers, like a t-shirt, and then that way when you sweat onto your t-shirt, which you can wash frequently, and this helps to protect your knitwear further. Should I hand wash or machine wash or dry clean? So firstly, always check the label. Before you wash anything, always make sure to read whatever the care label says to see what is recommended from the brand. As a quick reminder, this symbol means hand wash. This symbol means machine wash at whatever degrees the number says. When it comes to dry cleaning, if you have a simple knitwear piece, such as the one that I'm wearing now, if it says dry clean, I personally don't think you have to take it to the dry cleaners. Most knitwear that says dry clean, you can probably just hand wash, but please use that advice with caution. It really depends on the piece. If it has lining or if it has any embellishments or anything special on it, then it might have to be taken to the dry cleaners. I'm of the impression that dry cleaning uses a lot of heavy chemicals and a lot of abrasive movements, which is quite damaging to natural fibers. And when it comes to washing our knitwear, the number one rule is that we want to be as gentle with it as possible. And so from my own life, my own experience, I mainly hand wash my knitwear. Natural fiber knitwear is very delicate, and so hand washing is the gentlest way to clean it. I think when people think about hand washing, you might think that it takes a lot of time, but it honestly doesn't. And I'm going to walk you through how to hand wash your knitwear in a bit. But obviously, if you are pressed for time, if you have kids, if you have a very busy life and job, and you do want to throw your knitwear in the washing machine, you can, but at your own risk. And I'll walk you through how to wash your knitwear in the washing machine safely. If your washing machine has a wool wash setting, then use that. Otherwise, use the delicate setting. Make sure you select the lowest spin speed setting and the lowest temperature. Shrinkage is caused by hot temperatures, and so you want to use the lowest temperature possible. You should also use a special wool detergent, as this is less harsh than your normal laundry detergent. Put your item inside out, and then as an extra precautionary measure, I would also put it inside a mesh bag. This will give as much protection as you can to your item when it's like spinning around in your washing machine. And then hopefully that should do the trick. Hopefully your item won't come out with a changed shape or shrunk or anything like that. And you should lay your items flat to dry. And whilst you lay it out flat, you can kind of put it back into its original shape as well. Never hang it to dry, as the weight might cause it to grow, and you might also get like hanger marks in the shoulders. How do I hand wash? Honestly, hand washing is super easy. You just need to fill a clean basin or a sink with cool or lukewarm water. Add in the recommended amount of special wool detergent. I've also read that baby shampoo is a really good alternative, as it's very gentle And at the end of the day, things like cashmere or wool is like a hair fiber, and shampoo cleans hair, so it kind of makes sense. Again, you want to turn your item inside out and then submerge it into the basin or the sink of water. Then gently swish it around the water and give it a bit of a massage to loosen any dirt or debris that might be in the fabric. Leave it to soak for 5 or 10 minutes, and then rinse your item in clean, cool water until there's no more soap left. You want to make sure that you are just being really gentle and careful at this point. This is when your item is going to be the heaviest as it's soaked up all that water. You want to make sure that you have something supporting the bottom of the item, such as your hand. You never want it to just hang freely when it is soaking wet like that. This will cause it to stretch and to grow and to lose its shape. Once all the soap has been rinsed out, you want to get rid of the excess water. Never ever wring out your item. I like to just give it a gentle squeeze, like squeeze it in a ball all together and try and get as much excess water out. Once you've done that, you can take a clean towel and lay it on a flat surface. Then place your item on top of the towel. Again, you can put it back into its original shape. And then you want to roll the towel. And with each roll, I like to give it a press to really squeeze out all that excess water. And then again, just place it flat on your drying rack to dry completely. And this whole process probably takes like 20 minutes max. How do I spot treat my knitwear? So the less you wash your knitwear, the longer you can preserve it for. And like any stain, the faster you get to work on it, the easier it will be to remove. How you treat the stain really depends what it is. You know, is it coffee? Is it red wine? Is it a grass stain? These things are all very different to get out. I found a really good article, which I will link to in the description box, which kind of goes through lots of different stains and how to spot treat them. But some general tips when it comes to spot treating: you want to make sure that you are blotting the stain and then you're not going back and forth and rubbing it in, as this will actually push the stain further into the fabric. Do not ever use bleach, stain removal pens, or any harsh chemicals on your knitwear. Stick to your special wool detergents or baby shampoos. And you also want to avoid hot water, as this again will set the stain in further into the fabric. Should I use fabric softener on my knitwear? So I have been guilty of this in the past. I have actually used fabric softener on my knitwear, but since then I have read that fabric softener is actually really bad for your knitwear. The fabric softener coats the fibers, and this is what makes them feel really soft, but this actually reduces their moisture wicking abilities, and it could potentially cause the fibers to clump up or lose its shape. So as long as you use a knitwear detergent, that really should be enough. Can I put my knitwear in the dryer? The long and the short answer is never. Unless you want to shrink your knitwear 2 sizes, never ever put it in the dryer.
Thank you, Adeline. So the key takeaway is you have to choose what you want more. Joe the farmer wanted to go into agroecology, and Adeline wants to care for woolen garments. And remember, life's short, find your joy, and always remember it so you always enjoy.